Today I'm reading one of my blog posts, To Pet or Not to Pet. Let's say that there's a thunderstorm and your dog creeps up to you, pressing against you, seeking comfort. Should you pet him? That is the $100 question. So depending on who you ask, you'll get vastly different answers to that question of whether it's a good idea to pet and comfort an animal when they're scared. So many people recommend not comforting them, saying that petting fearful animals inadvertently reinforces the fear. Now, others would say that that's nonsense, that you should absolutely offer comfort to your animal companion when they're scared. And this group might say that petting doesn't reinforce fear, it reduces it. So, which is it? Could both sides have a point? I would say that yes, they do. And they're also both wrong, but not for the reason that you might think. So, my verdict is that please offer comfort, including petting, assuming that the animal knows you and that they enjoy being petted under normal conditions. So, offer comfort to your animal when they're fearful, but be observant. There's 3 different mechanisms that might make their fear worse, just not through the process of positive reinforcement. But let's start with terminology. Reinforcement. Does petting reinforce fear? And perhaps even more importantly, which type of reinforcement would we be talking about? Positive or negative? In positive reinforcement training, animals learn that certain behaviors have desired outcomes as they result in getting access to something that the animal wants. The animal performs a behavior, receives reinforcement, and repeats the behavior in order to get some more of that good stuff. Now, fear isn't a behavior, though, it's an emotional state. And I sometimes hear people say, emotions can't be reinforced, only behavior can be reinforced. And that sweeping statement suggests that emotions have nothing to do with the process of reinforcement or with behavior. And I happen to disagree. I think emotions have everything to do with reinforcement. After all, without emotional responses to stimuli, those stimuli wouldn't be reinforcing or punishing, and the animal wouldn't behave for the effect. Without emotional responses to incoming stimuli, those stimuli would remain neutral. It's because they elicit emotional reactions that those stimuli end up being reinforcers or punishers. But here's the kicker. Positive and negative emotions are regulated differently by positive versus negative feedback loops. Let's see if I can unpack that last statement because it's crucial to this discussion. Imagine for a second a dog who does a high five, gets petted, and then high fives some more. Petting feels good, assuming it's a positive reinforcer in the first place when delivered from one particular person to a particular animal. But let's make that assumption for now. Note that, though, people often overestimate how much their animals enjoy being petted, but that's a topic for another blog post, perhaps. For a cuddle-seeking animal, petting is a positive reinforcer that leads to more of the target behavior, in this case, high-fiving, and a corresponding feel-good emotion. It's a positive feedback loop. Emotions involved in positive reinforcement are in a positive feedback loop. Behavior serves to get access to more of the resource, and the animal strives to remain in or increase that pleasant emotional state. The animal continues offering high fives to get more attention, body contact, and remain in that happy mood, at least until something more interesting happens, or until they satiate. So, what about fear then? Well, here's how the fear is reinforced by petting argument typically goes. The animal acts fearful, gets petted, and then acts even more fearful in order to get petted some more. It is assumed that through positive reinforcement, so adding something the animal enjoys, fearful behavior will increase, and presumably the accompanying emotion too, then, although no distinction is usually made between observable behavior and the underlying emotional state when making this type of argument. However, fear is not comparable to operant behavior such as high-fiving or coming when called or going into a crate or a trailer. Fear is, again, an emotional state and one that has immense survival value. Fear also leads to predictable, observable reactions such as freezing, freeing, fleeing, hiding, or, if cornered, fighting. In other words, many behaviors associated with the emotion fear serve to reduce that emotional state by removing or increasing the distance to the frightening stimulus. This involves, by the way, the process of negative reinforcement, removing something the animal dislikes when the animal performs the target behavior. For instance, for a frightened animal, hiding would likely reduce the impact of the scary thing. In other words, the behavior would be in a negative feedback loop that reduces the fear. So even though the observable behavior, hiding for instance, may be negatively reinforced and showed again when the fearful stimulus is presented, the corresponding emotion is not. Successful negative reinforcement leads to relief, a reduction of fear, the emotion driving the behavior. So, emotions involved in a negative reinforcement are in a negative feedback loop. Behavior serves to diminish the aversive stimulation, and the animal strives to reduce or terminate that unpleasant emotional state. And once the aversives are below a certain threshold, the animal may stop showing the behavior altogether. So, to summarize how emotions, behavior, and reinforcement interact, high fiving produces treats when you're hungry through positive reinforcement, and happy excitement increases. And in contrast, hiding eliminates aversive stimuli when you're fearful through negative reinforcement, and fear is reduced. So, back then to the dog seeking comfort during a thunderstorm and the question of whether we should comfort and pet them. So, what were the arguments used? Again, does comforting a fearful animal positively reinforce the fear, or does comforting a fearful animal reduce fear? Now, I have trouble with both of these statements, actually. For starters, it's hard to even imagine that you could positively reinforce the emotion of fear and the associated observable behaviors, such as hiding, since they work in a negative feedback loop. So, no, I would say that there is no risk of positively reinforcing the fear by giving comfort. So, the argument that petting positively reinforces fear is just plain incorrect, since fear related behaviors are governed by negative reinforcement that result in the removal or reduction of the aversive stimulus, reducing the underlying emotional state through a negative feedback loop. And once fear has diminished beyond a certain level, the animal will likely stop showing fear related behavior. So, hiding during a thunderstorm is negatively reinforced since it reduces fear. And likewise, soliciting petting from the owner when fearful is also negatively reinforced since it reduces fear. So, getting comforted leads to a lessening of the aversive stimulus, and the animal will be more inclined to seek comfort the next time that he is fearful. So, yes, your dog will seek you out to ask for comfort when frightened, just as he will attempt to hide, since both behavior work to reduce fear through negative, not positive reinforcement. But I'm simplifying things, you may say, and you'd be right. Perhaps comforting leads to not just a lessening of the fear, but also perhaps an increase in positive emotions. So it could be even that there's a combination going on that's negative reinforcement of fear related behavior and positive reinforcement of comfort seeking behavior. But as I mentioned, I'd say we're not seeing positive reinforcement of fear related behavior. And indeed, many animal guardians will comfort their frightened animals to really good effect. However, we need to be mindful and observe the animal. It's not fail safe. And in my opinion, the people that warn that petting could make fear worse, they're not wrong. They're just using the wrong terminology. Comforting and petting a fearful animal may, unfortunately, lead to increased fear or more suffering just not through the process of positive reinforcement. And I see no less than 3 potential mechanisms where this might occur. So, mechanism 1 is the extinction burst. Let's say that the animal is really frightened. He seeks attention, gets petted, which under normal conditions feels really nice and constitutes positive reinforcement for the attention seeking behavior. But if the animal is too fearful, it could be that this effect is not achieved and high arousal is maintained. So if petting no longer works, the animal is no longer being positively reinforced. So what happens when previously reinforced behavior no longer works? Extinction bursts. That's what. And apparently it's not uncommon that frightened dogs start climbing and pawing their owners, getting even more aroused when they get petted. And that's perhaps because they're not getting the relaxation they've learned to expect from being petted when in a positive or neutral mood. So, hypothetically, at some arousal threshold, petting will no longer feel good, and this may cause an extinction burst and increased arousal in frightened animals. So, to reduce this risk, remove the trigger or block out the offensive stimuli, such as sounds and sights, by providing a good hiding place. Theoretically, this might keep the animal or the arousal level below the threshold so that petting still works. Mechanism 2, sensitization. Another scenario, the animal is really frightened by loud noises and has become sensitized to other stimuli, including other sensory modalities, such as touch. Sensitization has multimodal effects, meaning that the other senses tend to become sensitized too. So even though the original fear-inducing stimulus was auditory, they're now also tactilely sensitized to the point of touch, becoming aversive. And even though the animal may not become more fearful when petted, petting may add another unwanted stimulus on top of everything else and increase the general level of discomfort. So, to reduce the risk of sensitization, again, block out the aversive stimuli that's causing the fearful reaction and try to avoid sensory overload. Okay, mechanism 3, aversive counterconditioning. Through classical conditioning, fear may increase or decrease. And suppose that your animal is fearful of thunder or fireworks, and after each loud sound, you pet the animal. So the animal thus learns that awful sounds, bang, are followed by petting, and through counterconditioning, that sound becomes less aversive. Yay, success. Through counterconditioning, noise becomes a predictor of petting, something to look forward to. And as a result, noise is no longer scary. That would be the counter in counterconditioning. The emotional reaction has changed here from negative to positive. However, what happens if there is a new loud sound immediately after petting occurred? So it's petting, bang. Then it's hard to predict which type of counterconditioning will occur. If you're lucky, counterconditioning occurs to noise. So noise predicting petting. So then fear of noise should decrease. So the change is from negative to positive emotions. If you're unlucky, counterconditioning would occur to petting, petting preceding noise. So fear of petting might increase. The change is from positive to negative emotions. In other words, petting during noise might increase fear, not through operant conditioning and reinforcement, but through inadvertent classical conditioning, namely aversive counterconditioning. When petting and aversives alternate randomly, we don't know which type of counterconditioning that will occur. Appetitive, noise predicts petting, leading to a decrease of fear of noise, or aversive, petting predicts noise, leading to an increase of fear of petting. Incidentally, through the same process, animals may learn to fear wonderful treats too. To avoid aversive counterconditioning, be mindful of when your own behavior occur in relation to when the scary stimuli occur, and observe the animal carefully to see if what you're doing is helping or not. So their behavior should inform you whether you're successfully doing appetitive counterconditioning, reducing fear, and not inadvertently falling into aversive counterconditioning, increasing fear or discomfort. So I also think that petting during thunderstorm is more likely to be successful than petting during fireworks. During a fireworks display, there's typically more or less continuous sound, whereas during thunderstorms, annoying visual and auditory stimuli are less frequent. So I would therefore expect that the risk of inadvertent aversive counterconditioning, resulting in petting increasing fear, would be higher during fireworks than during thunderstorms, unless the animal is fearful of the changes in barometric pressure or electrical discharges, which may be a lot more continuous. I would also expect that the intensity of the stimuli would affect the outcome of frequent noises interspersed with petting. If the noise is loud, it may overshadow petting so that the animal doesn't even notice that they're being petted unless they've sensitized, which you will notice. And sorry, if you're unfamiliar with the term overshadowing, it means that one of the two stimulus is so obvious that the other stimulus isn't noted. If noise is soft, petting may overshadow the noise so that the animal doesn't even notice that there's a storm outside. And if you're using treats, make sure that they're absolutely fabulous so that the treats overshadow the noise rather, rather than the other way around. Of course, another factor that will influence the outcome of the interaction is that the human may be calmed by comforting and petting the animal, and that may have a huge influence on the animal also. So, do you agree? Do dogs respond better to comforting and petting during thunder than during fireworks? What's your experience? Let us know in the comment section. So, the conclusion is to be mindful of petting a frightened animal when they're fearful, especially during fireworks. It may make both you and the animal feel better, but pay attention to the animal and stop if you see that petting makes things worse, which could occur through three different mechanisms. Above all, block the annoying stimuli as best you can and allow the animal to hide. If you're giving treats after each scary event, make sure that they're superbly yummy. So, I teach about behavior management. So, if you're interested in learning more, sign up to get more info about future blog posts, free webinars, silly experiments, and online courses. Check out illis.se to sign up. Until next time, take care.